So welcome in our buddy Matt George, Locked On Kings podcast, ABC 10 podcast. Matt had a really good podcast last night talking about this game in which he wasn't throwing things or screaming or yelling. And I actually thought, and thank you for alerting me to this because it put my antennas up a little bit, Matt. I was telling Casey a minute ago, I thought the question you asked Mike was really good, and I thought Mike's response was really good.
Mm.
I'll let you, walk us through that. But the gist of the question was, is losing games the way that you did last night? Is that I think the term you used was, is that a necessary evil?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Mike's response was great.
Yeah, remind me to make sure I touch on this because I thought there were great moments from last night's press conference, and I thought there was one glaring bad moment from the Kings press conferences last night, and I'll address that when I get to it. But I had a very different response from a lot of people. Like I saw how Kyle Draper started the TV broadcast post game. I saw people on social media reacting, and some of the people reacting inside the Golden One Center. I had a very different reaction to last night's game. Now, I've hit the panic button already this season. Y'all remember early on in the year when the Kings were not playing defense and weren't shooting well. And I was wondering, okay, like, is this team trying to focus so much on the defensive side that they're losing their offensive touch? Since then, I've had those concerns kind of put to rest. Like I know the Kings are going to have bad offensive nights, but I know this team is still very dynamic offensively while the defense is improving. But last night to me was not oh my God, the Sacramento Kings melted down. Oh man, the Kings are terrible. The Kings are getting blown out for the 7th time this season. Although that is true. Last night was, here's a great team. Statistically, at least record-wise, the best team in the NBA right now. They came into your building and they showed you how far you still have to go. They showed you that Mike has talked so much about good to great and how difficult that is. So that was the preface to my question. Like, Mike, the gap looked pretty damn wide tonight
Mhm.
or last night. It looked really wide between good and great. And as much as you can preach to the guys in practice, this is what it takes, and show them film and analyze your Cleveland Cavaliers teams of old and Golden State Warriors teams of old that you were a part of as a coach. Experiencing a team that not only came in and shorthanded beat you, but a team that beat you on a second night of a back-to-back, which has arguably been your biggest issue so far this season. In 3 back-to-back games, you've gotten wiped. You have a team come in on the second night of a back-to-back after losing in overtime without their star. They have every reason in the world to hang their heads, and they didn't just beat you. They beat you at your own game by raining down threes and beating you into the fast break with 30 fast break points. A great team came in and turned a disadvantage into an advantage. They showed you right then and there what greatness is. So now you've experienced it. Now you've seen it. Now you know what you want to get to. You want to get to that point. And the Celtics, granted, they had to go through losing in the NBA Finals to figure some things out, and they still haven't won in all the years they've been together. So they certainly aren't the blueprint to follow, like a dynasty that is guaranteed to win a championship. They're still looking for that first ring. But I asked Mike that question. I thought his response was fantastic. And the major takeaway from that response, which he went into detail about when he was coaching LeBron in Cleveland and they were having a tough time figuring out how to stop a team. And LeBron stepped into the huddle and Mike stepped out. And LeBron basically said, no, this is what we're doing. This is what we've been working on. Turned to his teammates and said, you, and you go and do it. And I didn't have an opportunity to ask a follow-up question, but my follow-up question would have been, is that supposed to be De'Aaron Fox that does that job? Is that where De'Aaron Fox is supposed to step up and go, you, and you, this is what we're doing? And if so, maybe Fox didn't do that last night, and maybe that's still how he has to grow. But ultimately, Mike's point was, we've seen it, we have experienced it, and we need internally, meaning the players, need to take accountability, and it needs to come from within. So I thought everything that he gave me in that answer was phenomenal from Mike.
I know it was, man, and it felt like there was some things that he had on his mind that he wanted to get off his chest, not in a aggressive type of way, but just some things he saw, and it's like he kept saying, like, until this is what we got to do, whatever he was talking about at the time. This is what we got to do. We've talked about it as coaches. We've told them that this is what needs to be done. Until you actually do it on a consistent basis, we're going to have moments like this. That's kind of how it came across. It's like, we've told them what we got to do and what's needed. It's not always clicking. When it clicks, these moments, these type of games will stop. If it doesn't click, we'll be going through this again in a week. That's how it came off to me.
And to me, like you guys were just talking about it, like I do think there is definitely a mental weakness with this team. There absolutely is. And I have high expectations for Friday, but Friday's not going to tell me what I need to know because the Kings are 3-0 on first night of back-to-backs this season. And the Kings have proven going back to last year and going back to game 6 of the playoffs that when after they lose badly, they can respond and win. This team knows how to overcome an ass kicking. They've done it many times already this year. So that's not what we're looking for. It's can you follow up a victory or can you follow up the first night of a back-to-back, regardless of who you're playing and what's happening, with a equal to better effort the second night? So really, I'm not going to see, I don't think we're going to see too much of what the Kings learned from last night's loss tomorrow night. We're going to see what the Kings learned from last night's loss on Saturday against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm not saying I'm taking tomorrow night's game and throwing it away because you're still taking on a really good Phoenix Suns team that has KD and they're looking for revenge and they're coming in to beat you on your home floor. So you got to handle your business then and don't take them lightly. But if the Kings win tomorrow night, I've seen that before and I'll be happy about it. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen them follow that win up with another good performance and another win. Hell, just don't get your ass kicked on Saturday night, which is what the pattern would tell you is going to happen.
What was the bad moment?
So I thought Keon Ellis, and speaking of the mental weakness, I thought Keon Ellis did a really, really good job in his press conference as well. You just got wiped by the Boston Celtics on your home floor. And the first guy that comes out to face the podium and face questions is a two-way player who is at best a rotation player. He comes out. I asked him kind of a similar question to what I asked Mike is, hey, what do you learn? What do you take away from a Boston Celtics team that beat you on the second night of a back-to-back when you're struggling? And Keon, the first thing he said was, I think it's a mental thing. Like, I think we got to close out quarters better. I think we got to start games better. He brought it up himself. We didn't ask that. And he said, he ended the answer to my question with, I think tonight is on us. It's not on the Celtics beating us, or it's not on the Celtics doing things and X's and O's and breaking down the film. He said there's going to be things that we see that we obviously need to clean up, but I think tonight is on us. That is a two-way player who is saying this. No other Kings player came to the podium. Now, I don't blame Fox. I don't blame Sabonis, although I would have loved to have heard from one of the two of them. I blame the Kings. But we don't need to go into the PR team or anything too, because for the most part, they do a fantastic job and that's whatever. But we want to talk about mental weakness. You just got destroyed. And the player that you send out to answer for it is a two-way guy. The player that you send out to answer for is a guy that's just trying to earn his spot in the rotation, but we don't see a single starter. We don't see a single veteran. We don't see any of the guys that are supposed to be leaders of this team. Now, they open up the locker room afterwards, but at that point, we were told, like, hey, pretty much everybody's gone. And I think the only ones that were available in the locker room was Trey Lyles, and I didn't see anybody else. I didn't go into the locker room. I never have time to because of TV duties. Mm-hmm. But I thought, as good as what Mike said, and as great of what Keon Ellis did, and again, full props to Keon. He did a phenomenal job facing that music as a two-way guy. I thought shame on whether it was Kings players, Kings organization, regardless, shame on you for not sending someone out to, this is Sacramento media. We're throwing softballs at you. We're not New York media where we're looking to blame somebody. We're going to ask you what happened, what went wrong, and how can you fix it? Not, hey, this is your fault. So the fact that nobody came out to talk about it after that loss, I think is pretty, I thought it was pretty telling or pretty concerning.
I always wonder why those things happen. I'll never really understand. Maybe I don't have to deal with it on a daily basis. And if I did, I'd be just as irritated, but I don't know why these athletes don't like talking to the media.
Well, and can I say full transparency too? If I just got my butt kicked that bad, I wouldn't want to talk either, especially if I'm De'Aaron Fox on my freaking birthday. So I don't necessarily blame the players for not wanting to do it. But at that point, it's somebody's job. Somebody needs to face that. And it can't just be, if it was no Kings players, that almost would have been better than sending the two-way guy out to do it. Like Keon had the stones to step up and answer questions and face that. Nobody else did. No established member of that roster did. That's the part that bothers me.
I want to, and I understand, and I don't have to deal with the frustrations that Matt and James and Sean and you guys have to when it comes to covering this team. I do want to be, I do want to, like, Keon has become I think you said this a second ago. He's a rotational player. He is by categorization a two-way player. Mm-hmm. But he's not a guy who sits on the end of the bench. Like, he's an important part of what they do. I'm not trying to like minimize like your guys' frustration, because I completely understand. I just want to make sure we're not degrading like Keon.
Sure.
Like, Keon is out there working. The fact that he's the only player that went out there is probably a slightly bigger issue.
Well, and to build on that point,
for you guys,
D'Lo, I mentioned that he's a two-way player as almost a term of endearment. Like, here's this guy that is trying to carve out his spot in the league and seems to have done so, but he's the one facing the music and handling it as professionally as he did.
He might have gave you the most honest answer you were going to get.
Absolutely. Which is good in that sense. But it's not just like a media standpoint of, hey, I deserve to talk to a star after that kind of loss, because there are media members like that. And that's not what I'm trying to be. And if it comes off that way, that's not my intention. To me, if I'm a fan, if I'm anybody, I want to hear from someone who I know is a part of this core, a part of this group. I don't just want to hear from them after wins, although I enjoy that a lot more. I want to hear from someone talk to me about what went wrong or what they're going to fix. Not just someone who is a rotational player who's trying to earn a consistent NBA spot.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. Like I said, I just never understand that aspect of being a professional athlete. Especially, I was talking to Jesse about it earlier. Especially when, like, for lack of a better term, you get away with just saying whatever.
Yeah,
like I'm just throwing a name out there. Malik Monk could have went up there and just, hey, what happened tonight, man? You know, got our butts kicked. We didn't bring the intensity, and you know, they just outworked us today. Oh, okay. Well, what do you guys do in the huddle to kind of fix that? Well, you know, got to communicate and make sure everybody's on the same page, and that's all you got to do. Like,
you can use those answers virtually for
every time. And this, you know, something like this isn't even an issue. You know what I mean? So I just never understand it. I just don't.
Question in the chatty house, Brando asks, does this happen often? No, it does not. No, it does not. Like, the Kings typically do a fantastic job. The joke used to be that this was Harrison Barnes's job. Like, for years, Harrison Barnes was, the Kings just got wiped. Okay, put Harrison Barnes out there. Let him.
Plus point losses. Harrison's got to go to the podium.
And everybody remembers Do-Rag De'Aaron for a time when he was out there and not looking happy for a long time. So for the most part, no, this does not happen. And in reality, it's really not that big of a deal. But on a day where we're talking about mental toughness, I think that's just another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I agree. It's a small sign of your mental makeup as a team. I think.
Do you think this team's mentally? This is gonna
soft.
Yeah, I was gonna say weak, but that felt harsh. Yeah, is this team mentally soft?
In certain aspects, yes. I mean, that's what we can point to, and that's been brought up by Mike. I mean, we think about what we've talked about in after blowout losses so far this season, especially on second night of a back-to-back. The most recent one when the Kings were beaten down in Los Angeles to the Clippers. What did Mike Brown say after the game? We didn't have enough fight tonight. Think about the Los Angeles Clippers loss in Sacramento after that tremendous win without Fox over Oklahoma City. What was the message in the locker, or the post-game press conference was, man, we just were emotionally exhausted after that great effort the night before. Like, this is what they're talking about. This is what they're saying. But again, I've seen this team be mentally strong enough to respond from bad losses. I've seen them be mentally strong enough to go into Chase Center, where the Golden State Warriors were really good last year, and win a must-win game to force Game 7. So I've seen this team be mentally strong in certain aspects, but where they're mentally weak is rallying when they're put under some significant pressure. Or they're put under there's a word that I'm looking for that I'm not finding, but essentially in-game adversity. Absolutely. Well said, Kenny. Like, when this team starts to unravel, it unravels. And this team does not. And Mike Brown used all but one timeout. He had one timeout remaining at the end of the third quarter, guys. So he's calling timeouts left and right, trying to right this ship. And there were times where he was yelling at the bench. Fox 40's Sean Cunningham posted an excellent video of Mike ripping into the bench, including Malik Monk. He is not afraid to yell and scream when he has to get his point across. But what Mike is saying is it has to come from within too. Mike did his part. He called 6 different timeouts in 3 quarters to try and re-freaking group. And he couldn't get the message across. So that's where, whether it's Fox, Sabonis, Monk, whoever the hell it is, JaVale, I don't know. That's where it needs to come. The LeBron side of, this is what we do. We're going to do it. Let's take some freaking pride. That's the mental weakness that I see with this team still.
Do you think that this is a team, this group is capable of kind of working through this and being a different team? And I only ask because I think that this is going to be a different team in February than they are today. Not personnel wise, but just they'll work through these things. Like, we won't have these same discussions come February. Do you think do you have the same confidence that I do that they'll work through this kind of stuff, or does there need to be a shakeup at some point?
Wholeheartedly, Kenny, I do. I expect this team to respond. They've given us every reason to believe to this point, plus with the impact that Mike Brown has had on this roster, the change of the culture that we've witnessed in front of our very eyes over the last couple of years. I absolutely do. Also, I do because I think it's going to have to come from the core, and we know this core isn't going anywhere. So if there's a shakeup, you're trying to add to the core, right? Everybody's talking about King's got to make a move. King's got to make a move. Go get OG. Go get Zach LaVine. Go add another piece to this group. But what Mike is saying is it's got to come from the group, right? It's got to come from De'Aaron, Sabonis, Keegan. If that's your big 3, you want to add Malik Monk to that to make it a 4. It's got to come from them. So it has to answer your question, Kenny, like, it has to work. They have to figure it out because Monty's not going to go and get guys in a trade at the trade deadline, in the trade market, or even this offseason that are going to come in and change that culture for you. You might bring in guys to help with that. JaVale has come in and during training camp, JaVale was a very vocal leader. Remember when Tristan Thompson was also a vocal leader during training camp too? What good does that freaking do?
Casey's
guy. You gotta it's gotta be from the core. It's gotta be. So yes, I do believe this team will absolutely figure this out and overcome it. And it starts with them learning the lesson that I think they needed to learn last night.
What are your expectations for this team?
I think where the Kings are in the standings is very accurate to who they are, which is they are a top 10 NBA team. They are firmly planted in the playoff picture in the West. I think they're definitely a top 6 team. Now, it's definitely possible with, God forbid, injuries or anything that happens that they could become a play-in team. But I think if this team this team is a firmly established playoff team in the Western Conference. The reaction that I wholeheartedly disagree with that I saw a lot last night was, this Kings team has not gotten any better. This Kings team is going to be a first-round playoff exit again. I completely disagree with that because this version of De'Aaron Fox is good enough to win you a playoff series. You add in a Domantas Sabonis, who we should absolutely all expect to play better than he did during the Golden State Warriors series. You add in Keegan Murray in year 2, now is very clearly the best defender on this team. And you add in just something more from Herter and Barnes than what you got in the playoffs last year, plus Malik Monk playing like a 6th man of the year, and maybe the addition of Sasha or Duarte or whoever the hell you want, Keon Ellis off the bench, whoever it is. Like, this team is more than good enough to win a playoff series, guys. That's why I think this is what the Kings are going to roll with. I really genuinely do. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think Monty's going to look for upgrades in the trade market. I just don't see realistically how they get the pieces that fans are wanting or the pieces that this team needs to insert contendership conversation, right? I just don't think they're getting that this year. I think you roll in with what you got into the playoffs. This team's good enough to make it out of a first-round playoff series, give or take the matchup. You're probably not feeling too good if it's you versus the Pelicans in a best-of-7 at this point, but who knows? Yeah, KC feels fine. Regardless, like if there's matchup concerns either way, like I think you're just fine rolling into the playoffs. I think you win a playoff series with this group. I think you probably put up a good fight in a second series. Maybe you win it, maybe you don't. And you go back to the drawing board this summer. You evaluate Herter, you evaluate Monk, you evaluate everything around your core that you know you have here, which is Fox and Sabonis and probably Murray at that point. And that's where, if you've got to make swings, you have the context of 2 playoff series now under your belt. That's where you make your swings. That's what I think is going to happen.
The money's a factor.
Yes.
Money was a factor. Let me ask you both this. I think I know how you'll respond. I'm pretty confident I know how you'll respond. Matt, I'm going to ask Matt directly because I feel like I know your answer.
I want to know Kenny's answer.
You can respond. This money works. Let's start there.
Yep.
Are things different if it's not Harrison Barnes who signs that contract, but it's Dillon Brooks?
Yes. I think
in
so.
a positive way.
In a positive way. I think, I give Dillon Brooks full credit with the impact.
He got a Dillon Brooks jersey. He just doesn't wear it, but he's got one. He doesn't know we know, but he's got one.
I'm not the biggest fan of Dillon Brooks, but I can't argue with what I've seen, how he's changed the culture in Houston. And I believe, to some extent, I believe Dillon Brooks in Sacramento is not letting the Boston Celtics get away with everything they got away with last night. Maybe he does something stupid, which is very possible. We don't know. And he's had issues and stuff like that in the past. I also don't know how much I like Dillon Brooks as part of this Kings group, but if they accepted him, who the hell am I to say anything? But yeah, I do think Dillon Brooks makes more of a positive impact on the Sacramento Kings short term than Harrison Barnes does, at least on the floor. Behind the scenes, where Harrison is very well loved and Dillon Brooks, who the hell knows? Couldn't answer that question.
I feel like
you want to love or you want to win.
That's right. There we go.
Yeah.
You can love Harrison in a Houston uniform.
Yeah.
You can love Harrison anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to pick on Harrison. I used Harrison as an example because that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Hell yeah. I advocated for Dillon Brooks this offseason. I didn't advocate for him as a starter. You know, I was like, I didn't see him making $20 million a year.
Yeah.
I was like, you bring him in, cheap deal coming off the bench, whatever the case may be. When it's bad with Dillon Brooks, it looks really, really bad. Like his shooting, he just looks lost on defense. Like when it's bad, it's nasty. It was nasty in those playoffs.
The biggest problem with Dillon Brooks is that a team, because with Harrison, you at least have to defend him. Even if Harrison's not shooting or isn't making shots. With Dillon, there could be a point where you just don't have to.
Yeah, there could be. And that's what I mean. When it's bad with him, it is awful.
Bad, yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't see every game, so I don't know. I don't know how often it gets that bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think a lot of the times it's kind of even keeled. Sometimes he goes up and it's like balling. And I think that's where it's at most of the time. It's just we're all on notice. It feels like we're all on notice when it's like really, really bad. But I think, he absolutely would help this team in a positive light.
Dillon Brooks has played 9 games in December, guys. 8 of them have been double figures. 1 of them was a 2-point game. In the month of December, he's shooting 39% from 3-point range on 6 attempts per game. He's shooting 48% from the field on 12 attempts per game. You can plug those numbers for the most part. Maybe he doesn't get 12 attempts per game in Sacramento, but the floor spacing and the amount the Kings like to shoot, I have a good feeling Dillon could take 6 threes per game without too much issue here in Sacramento. So offensively, if I can hope as best as I can to copy and paste those numbers over, he's giving you offensive impact, and we know what he does on the defensive end, and we know what he does culture-wise. So
how many rebounds he get a night?
Right now, he's averaging 3.8 rebounds in December. It was 3.5 in March. Or November. For the season, it's 3.6.
Harrison's 3.2 in December. 10 points per game. 46% from 3.
And Harrison's offensive input
50% from the field.
Harrison's offensive input for the most part during this homestand and for the most part in December has been pretty good. I've been pretty happy with what Harrison has been providing the Kings, at least during wins. But And last night's certainly not Harrison Barnes'
I
fault.
mean, no, not
Just
at
to
all.
clear that up.
Harrison in particular will always be the guy who's talked about being moved.
Yeah.
And he knew that the second the contract was signed is, well, what is it, December 15th? December 29th?
29th.
All right.
Yeah,
December 29th it is.
I remember the discussions the day that was signed was that contract is movable.
That's it. And like, that's just,
that contract's tradable.
It's a bit of a disservice to Harrison, but it's also like Harrison fits on just about any basketball team like out there.
Yep.
The question becomes is like, are you really getting better if you trade him? And you must have a glaring weakness somewhere if that's the case. But Dylan Brooks is the one that comes to mind because it seems like he's performing a little bit better than people expected him to in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
People, I was listening to some last night, and they were talking about, December 15th, and trade talk is ramping up because trade season is here. And I guess like Bobby Marks had a tweet the other day. It was like, there's been one December trade in the last 3 years. Like, trade season is here. These trades never happen. We just start talking about them.
Bobby low-key pissed me off this morning.
What about
Bobby? Now I know Bobby's a Kings guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's our guy. It's so dumb. But he was talking about tradable assets that Sacramento. He wrote a lengthy every team in the league, that stuff Bobby does, right? And there was Herter and Barnes and Keegan Murray.
Nope.
I was like, no one told him.
No, he just didn't get the memo.
I should have. We should do. Yeah. Jesse, text Bobby Marks and tell him, hey, you got to take Keegan Murray out of your.
Yeah, got to take him out
of your write-up. He's not a movable asset.
No, he's not a movable asset.
He's next to Domas and De'Aaron.
Once again, I mean, we're talking about 7 guys in the league that we're moving Keegan for.
You guys talk at all about our good friend KOC today?
Yeah,
a lot of clown behavior.
We did. I mean, we just called him, one of the several basketball nerds that like to talk about the Sacramento Kings, despite they have little understanding. And this, Matt, the gist of it was a pretty lengthy conversation with multiple layers to it. But the gist of it was, as Kings fans and as people who listen to D-Lo and KC and Locked On Kings and consume Kings content at a rapid pace, and shout out to everybody who's posted their Spotify raps and their podcast raps, and it just shows different versions of Kings content.
Yep.
Like that's dope. Like, but when you read stuff from guys like Harper and O'Connor, you realize that's wrong. Remember that the next time you read something they wrote about Orlando or Phoenix or a team that you don't know as much about. Remember what they wrote about your team and how off they were, and understand that the assessment that they're probably giving on this other team is equally as wrong.
And it's not just that it's wrong, it's cherry picking. Like that's what I think frustrates me the most out of what some of the commentary that I see around the Sacramento Kings is. It can, like, Kings on a 3-game win streak over this homestand. They've won the last 4 straight at home. They've beaten Denver once. They've beaten the Lakers twice. They've beaten some of your darlings, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They beat twice, one with Fox, one without. Like, all these games where Sacramento has proven something. Domantas Sabonis has a triple-double. Who's against the Wizards or Crickets? Nothing. But as soon as the Kings are losing a game, Domantas Sabonis is too small. Domantas Sabonis is underrated. This. Like, it's just cherry picking. And D'Lo, you and I discussed this a lot this morning. On as soon as D'Lo and KC's over, 6 o'clock tonight, an episode of Locked On Kings drops. D'Lo and I talking about the MVP conversation around De'Aaron Fox and how the goalposts just continue to move because of it being here in Sacramento. So it's not so much about people being wrong, because half the time I expect them to be wrong about the Sacramento Kings. I'm wrong about teams that outside of the Sacramento market all the time. I'm just basing it off of assumptions and low-hanging fruit and watching them 1 or 2 times a year when the Kings play them, right? But
you know what the difference is, though? You're not an NBA writer. You don't cover the league.
Right.
You cover the Sacramento Kings.
That's true.
These guys frame themselves as NBA writers. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If you want to cover, if you want to create a category where we cover the Lakers and whatever team Kevin Durant's on, and then the hot team in the East, great, do that. But don't tell me you're an NBA writer, because you're not.
100%.
I ain't see you here.
Right.
I saw Mark.
100%.
Mark Spears is here. Mark's an NBA writer. Mark Spears was here. Mark Spears was in New Orleans when Ja returned. You see Mark make sure he's in these streets. He covers this league. Kevin O'Connor ain't here.
Kevin,
and if his ass even thinks about coming in,
trick list,
he better check. He better check in.
Yeah, you better check in.
Just because you're friendly with Deuce and Mo doesn't mean you got admittance into this.
You better check in.
Hey, if Deuce and Mo are checking you as a friend, you know, maybe you're doing a little too much.
You know what it was, Matt? Like I said, it's just you know, in my opinion, the guy showing his ass as just an attention-seeking type of guy. That's all it is. He wants attention. I can't. That's cool if that's what you want to do. That's whatever. But I don't take you seriously as a journalist or analyst or whatever it is that you're trying to be. You're attempting to be, because it's not what you're saying necessarily. It's how you're going about it. How you're going about it is just trying to get clicks and trying to get attention. You know, there's no real thought into it. And like I said, somebody else was bringing this out here, and I agree. It feels like he's one of those guys that has all the answers with no solutions, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Like, this is what they should do. All right, how we get there? Well, I don't know. Well, okay, well, specifically, who should it be? Well, I don't know. I just know this is what you need to do. All right, thanks for nothing.
For your help. Yeah.
Thank you for nothing. And that's the guy he seems to be. He always tells somebody what they should be doing without mentioning realistic ways of getting there.
I thought De'Aaron's tweet, which was responding to, I think, Kevin's co-host on his podcast, which is consistency is now a bad thing, or he goes, new take, consistency is bad, talking about how Domantas Sabonis has had the same numbers over the past 5 years, as if he's not putting up numbers as a center second to only a 2-time MVP. So, hey, and I mean, in reality too, are there better options at center in the league than Domantas Sabonis? Absolutely. Are they acquirable? Absolutely not. And any team in the league, if you took Domantas Sabonis's name and picture out of it, and you approach them and you read to them what Domantas Sabonis gives you on a nightly basis, every general manager, even with a starting caliber center already on their roster, would say, yeah, I wouldn't mind having some more of that. Everybody in the league would love to have what Domantas Sabonis gives you. Everybody in the league would love to have what De'Aaron Fox gives you. This is why, whether you want to call it whining or complaining, if you're not in Sacramento, if you're here visiting the D'Lo and KC show, whatever it is, if you want to say, man, Kings fans whine about the Sacramento perspective and they don't like us because we're Kings fans, they don't like us because we're Sacramento, whatever. There's merit to that frustration from fans, because when a player wears their jersey, it's different than when that player goes and dons an Indiana Pacers jersey, for example. And I'm using Tyrese as an example because Tyrese was very loved here in Sacramento. Tyrese drew a lot of attention with how well he played his rookie season. Tyrese wasn't a superstar that the Kings were stupid, and any team would be stupid to trade until the second he got traded. Suddenly, as now that he's no longer a Sacramento King, the Kings were foolish to get rid of him. Why? Because he actually wanted to stay in Sacramento.
Only one.
As if everybody else on this roster is begging for a ticket out.
Yeah.
It's silly.
You know what? In such a, I think we mentioned this earlier, such a great like stamp to that. Like, no, it's real. This isn't make believe. They ain't talking about Keegan Murray. Look at what first of all, look at what Keegan Murray did in his first year. Now look what he's doing in his second. Nothing.
Yo, imagine.
He's not the greatest player ever yet. He's got to be traded to be the greatest player ever.
Imagine if the Kings traded Keegan to, this is never going to happen. Imagine they trade him to Toronto for a package including Pascal Siakam. Imagine the headlines. The Kings just gave the Toronto Raptors one of the best young wings in the league to pair with Scotty Barnes. The Raptors are set for life. The Kings are idiots.
Yep.
That's exactly what it would be.
Yeah.
The thing about it is,
Kings would be idiots for doing that, but
yes, they would.
As you said, they would never do that.
Some people may call it whining or whatever the case may be. There ain't no whining going on over here. All we're doing is We remember what you said.
Mm-hmm.
We remember the energy you had. We're asking you, why is it different? And here's the other thing that maybe guys, people can't do on Twitter that we all have the ability to do. And guys like Kevin O'Connell show their ass about. We asked you to come talk about your side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
We want to know. I disagree with you, but it ain't personal. I want to hear your POV. I want to hear what you got to say. Crickets don't want to come on. Somebody asked Kevin O'Connell if he want to come on, and he don't do that.
No, he doesn't.
No.
That's why you calling him Kevin O'Connell. Just we ain't even gonna call him by his name no more. That's fine. I was calling him the basketball nerd. You just changed his name. That's fine. To hell with him.
I was trying to get my Mayweather on because he calls Oscar De La Hoya Oscar De La Hoya.
Why do you think I'm gonna get all these boxing references? Why do you always do that?
I genuinely thought he screwed it up twice.
He
I was like, wait a minute, he did it twice?
I'm just too nice because I didn't want to correct him. Like,
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell man is funny. Kevin O'Connell man, that's funny.
That's more of a joke. You got to just get his name wrong. Like you don't really care about him. Like Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell doesn't know what he's talking about.
You throw boxing references at me. Like, you just know I'm not going to get
Floyd
them.
always says, yeah, I remember when I fought Oscar De La Hoya.
Matt, you said
he got on the dude Telefimo Lopez.
Matt, you said the new podcast drops at 6.
Podcast drops at 6 featuring Damian Barlow.
Me. It's a very good podcast. I
know
I did it. I was there.
I'm checking it out.
Very
You didn't
nice.
yell at me. I was excited.
I don't yell at you.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on, man. I gave you a huge hug. Like we embrace with love. I haven't yelled at you in years.
Damian was dressed like the fall streets of Sacramento last night, though. He looked like a walk down Doco with leaves on the ground, but it looked good.
Why was everybody shooting at my man D'Lo yesterday?
I didn't. What was the shoot? I liked it. It looked good. You said fall. You spoke fall to me. I was ready to have Thanksgiving with you.
No, yeah. Everybody's shooting at my man.
You look good. Hey, only one of us on this show has ever gotten a compliment about their fit from Malik Monk. Only one of us. And that is about as big of an endorsement as you can get because Malik probably has the best fashion sense in this city.
That's a solid endorsement. I do appreciate the local guy and all the people who asked me if I bought the $600 jacket yet.
Oh, that's what we're waiting for.
I wanted it so bad.
See,
nasty.
When D'Lo's courtside, he gets compliments from Malik Monk. When I'm courtside, I get hit by a ball from Chris Duarte.
That was funny. Hey, but like Biederman said, that was a 9 out of 10 dap. Like he turned around, that was good.
Duarte's a cool cat, man. Because we're in the way. I'm standing on the baseline. They're warming up. I'm in their way with a camera. Like, get the hell out of my way. But Duarte's nice enough to go, hey, my bad, man. I'm just doing my job here while you're in my freaking way. Get off the court.
Yeah, it was a bad night.
Oh my gosh, Tom.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Actually,
okay. You know what? We're done.
Hold on.
We're going to Thursday night football right now. We will see you guys tomorrow.